Tonight's speech is for my fellow conservatives. Who in this audience is a conservative? Well, my speech tonight is for you, but everyone else can eavesdrop in. Now, you may not know this, but I actually grew up as a conservative Republican. By the time I got to college, I was actually the president of the College Republicans at William Jewell College in 1990. And as leader of the College Republicans, I got to meet this gentleman. Anybody recognize him?
John Ashcroft.
Yeah, that was then Missouri Governor John Ashcroft, conservative Republican. Didn't I have beautiful hair at the time? That long flowing hair? Kind of like your hero there, Ted Nugent. Maybe not exactly there, Jerry. Well, question for you guys. See if anybody can guess this. Who was the first world leader to address the United Nations General Assembly on climate change? Any guesses? No, it wasn't Gore. It wasn't George Washington. That was a good guess.
Richard Nixon.
Not Richard Nixon.
Carter.
I'm sorry?
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter. That's a really good guess there also. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? I heard somebody say
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt? It was actually this person. Who's this?
Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher on November 8th of 1989. Because of her strong conservative principles, she had the nickname of, anybody remember? The Iron Lady. And because she had such strong conservative principles, which U.S. president did she work closely with?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Well, I don't know if you guys knew this, but her first job was actually a chemist. She was actually a scientist. So over the years as she became more aware of global science, she became very concerned about climate change. So this is what she said on November 8th of 1989. She said, quote, what we are doing to the world by degrading the land surfaces, polluting the waters, and adding greenhouse gases to the air at an unprecedented rate, all this is new in the experience of the earth. It is mankind and its activities which is changing the environment of our planet in damaging and dangerous ways. We know more clearly than before on planet Earth that we carry common burdens, face common problems, and we must respond with common action. So my fellow conservatives, we were making the case we must take action on climate change before liberals. So what is the best conservative solution to climate change? Does anyone know who this gentleman is? This is actually Greg Mankiw. He was actually the chief economic advisor for President George W. Bush, and he was also a top economic advisor for Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney was running for president in 2012. Now on January 3rd of 2006, Greg Mankiw wrote an editorial in the Wall Street Journal called Repeat After Me, which he said, I advocate a carbon tax as the best way to control global warming. And it's not just conservative economist Greg Mankiw that's advocating a carbon tax. There's lots of top conservative economists who support a carbon tax, such as Art Laffer. Anybody ever heard of him before? He was actually a leading economic advisor for President Ronald Reagan. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, he was the chief economic advisor for John McCain when he ran for president in 2008. And Kevin Hassett, he's the director of economic policy studies for the conservative think tank, the American Enterprise Institute. And so these are about as top as you can get as far as conservative economists, and they're all endorsing a carbon tax. And besides these guys, someone else who supports a carbon tax is this gentleman. Anybody recognize him?
George Will.
George Will, conservative commentator for ABC News and Fox News. So why do all these conservatives support a carbon tax? What they will tell you is this: we should tax what we burn, not what we earn. Who here likes payroll taxes? Who here likes income taxes? Who here likes corporate taxes? Nobody ever raises their hand there during this part. Well, conservative economists hate them even more than you do, because they feel like these taxes drain the economy and they make it harder for people in their economic daily power. And so what they advocate is we should be taxing things that we don't like, such as pollution. They say the way you get less harmful pollution is to make pollution expensive. And an example they cite is cigarette taxes. Now, I saw an interesting graph in September 2014 in National Geographic. It showed that in 1965, 44% of the US population smoked. Today, it's about 19%. And there's all kinds of reasons for this decline. One is the change in social values. Also, the overwhelming scientific evidence that smoking causes cancer. But conservative economists also point to increasing cigarette taxes, which has actually reduced smoking too, discouraging people from smoking. So the great thing about a carbon tax is that it reduces pollution while putting more money in your pocket, and it also cleans the air. And the way it does this is by being revenue neutral. Now, what does that mean, revenue neutral? That means if this tax is enacted, you may see increased prices at the gas pump or on your electric utility bill by using gas, oil, or coal. So $1 may be taken from you or more than that, but that same amount will be returned to you in a monthly or annual dividend check. Now, the leading organization that's advocating a revenue-neutral carbon tax is a group that I'm very involved with. I'm co-leader up here in St. Louis, Citizens Climate Lobby. And their goal, their ambitious goal, is to get Congress to pass this year a revenue-neutral carbon tax. So what's their specific plan? A tax will be placed on carbon-based fuels at the source, basically the coal mine, oil well, or the US border. This tax starts at $15 a ton of fossil carbon dioxide emitted. It increases steadily each year by $10, so that clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels in a decade. All the money collected is returned to American households on an equal basis. And 66% of all American households, 2/3, would break even or come out ahead. They would receive more money than their dividend check than they would pay for the increased cost of energy. This actually helps protect the poor and middle class. And this is quite a sentence right here, so bear with me as I try to read it to you here. A predictably increasing carbon price will send a clear market signal, which will then unleash entrepreneurs and investors in the new clean energy economy. Now, that's quite a mouthful, but it's basically saying this. This is the best free market solution out there. It's not a big government solution, it's a free market solution. And carbon taxes have been road tested worldwide, and they have been considered very successful. The closest example to us is British Columbia. British Columbia, which is just north of Washington State. British Columbia has had a carbon tax in place since 2008. And as a result, while the rest of Canada, their use of fossil fuel has grown, British Columbia has been able to reduce their petroleum use by 17%. Even with having more fuel-efficient vehicles out, they've been able to reduce their carbon emissions out there. And doing this at the same time, they've been able to reduce a whole bunch of corporate, payroll, and income taxes there too. So why is a revenue-neutral carbon tax the best solution for conservatives? Well, number one, it does not add to the federal debt or federal deficit. And that is because, again, it is revenue neutral. So again, $1 that's taken from you from increased taxes and then given back to you then in a monthly or annual dividend check. Number two, the reason why a carbon tax is great for conservatives, it does not grow the size of government. That's because no big government agency or bureaucracy is added, which then leads to number three. It is very easy to administer. Who here has ever received a Social Security check or a tax return check? Well, that same mechanism that cuts you a check for Social Security or a tax return from the US Treasury would cut you that check for that monthly or annual carbon dividend. Now, I've been giving this speech for close to a year now. Look familiar? This is me giving it last April in Union, Missouri for a group of close to 50 people. And as I've been giving this speech, the strongest criticism I've received from my fellow conservatives is that they tell me, Brian, there's no way you could trust politicians to enact a new tax, even if it's revenue neutral. They're just going to take that pot of money and give it to their favorite pet project or their favorite special interest. And I do think that's a valid criticism. But I like how the way my friend, conservative Republican, former member of Congress, Bob Inglis, responds to this. He said, quote, "If it's true that we cannot trust politicians with a revenue-neutral carbon tax, then we need to write to the British monarchy and ask them to come back. We need to tell them that our experience with self-government has failed. We need to tell them that we're not capable of governing ourselves, and truly, we want you back. We need someone wise over us to make decisions for us, because we cannot do it by ourselves." Well, Bob Inglis goes on to say that, "I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to make that concession. I believe a free people can govern themselves. The answer is simple. Rise up, Americans. Realize you're free citizens. Impose accountability on your elected officials. If they do something you don't like, get rid of them. That's what free people do." Well, I will never claim to be as smart as Bob Inglis, George Will, Greg Mankiw, or Margaret Thatcher, but I do know 3 things for sure. You guys ready here? Number 1, death, taxes. Number 2, don't get caught with a bad haircut, if you meet a famous conservative. And number 3, a carbon tax is good for conservatives and you. Mr. Toastmaster.